Greetings everybody, and welcome to another Wu-Sabat Outformation class. The proof by way of Nabab Yaanuwn, part 16, dealing with epigenetics. So we were looking at the science of relationships, and then went even a bit deeper on the inside, on the internal aspect, to do with epigenetics and the enemy and the saviour within. So we had a class last week touching on this subject, and we're going to continue down that road today. So I'm not going to do a long introduction because we've done a fairly long one last week. So if you just joined us for the first time, we are the United Sabians worldwide, and this class has been brought to you by a derivative within that called All Eyes in Egypt, Midlands and the North, based out of the UK. So if you do want more information about us, the website here, United Sabians worldwide.com. Lots of resources if you want to learn the language and things of that nature. Then all of that's on our site. Information about our culture, all of that's on our website. So check that out. And obviously, if you want to seek to become a member, information pertaining to that is also on that site as well. Yeah. So get into the class today, and just do a quick introduction, as I've said, and just walk you a little bit how we use the Zoom platform for today. But in the first instance, what we'll do is that we'll just make a positive sort of connection with our ancestors. We're in a positive class today. I'm one of your student teachers, Nabab Kakni Hess, and you've got, as I say, Haraim Habab Jadefrey Hatap and Manfred Ba'ar Gabab going to be supporting you today. So please feel free to ask questions throughout the class. But we'll start off, as I say, with Partak Yud, part of our culture, called the affirmation.
Barur, 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 Nabab, Nadar, Muqtar, Naut, Muqdad, Badad, Patah, Naut, Mukhlas, Badad, Yaanuwn.
Partak Yud.
Anuki, Jawef, Ashuk, Hem, Paut, Kalal, Ashuk, Kawun, Jawef, Neya, Anuki, Kasam, Em, Paut, Paut, Kawun, Kasam, Em, Neya, Anuki, Wahu, Amet, Paut, Paut, Kawun, Wahu, Amet, Neya, Nakuk, Kadur, Najib, Amet, Kasam, Em, Paut, Wu-Sabat, Amet, Mushkhas, Nakuk, Kadur, Kawan, Kalal, Pafaf, Nakuk, Arod, Jawef, Paut, Amet, Wasef, Amet, Aratni, Kawun, Laye, Bakoy, Jawef, Paut, Anuki, Abed, Leyet, Nafashni, Paut, Kawun, Anuki, Paut, Kadur, Nakuk, Kadur, Paut, Amul, Nakuk, Amul.
Okay, so let's walk you through the translation. So it said, holy, 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 master, overseer, almighty, and then no God except Ptah, no savior except Yaanuwn. So Ptah in our culture is the head of what we refer to as the nine, and our savior in this day and time, so the one who our ancestors selected to bring back or renew our story in this day and time, is known as Yaanuwn. Yeah, the spiritual science of the Negroid or Nagaru, known as Wu-Sabat in this day and time. This is why they refer to us as our savior, but not in the context of saving to use it later, but in the context of bringing back or restoring back as part of our 24,000 year renewal of our story, resetting back us, or that true connection back with mind again. So when our story gets renewed, the spiritual science of Wu-Sabat always visits the minds of the posterity, yeah, meaning the descendants in the first instance. So nothing can be done right unless the mind is right. So that science deals with the mind, yeah. We've been brain dirtied and need our brains washed of all of the misinformation and lies in order for us to be restored back to who we are supposed to be. That is supreme beings in this day and time. So Partakyod, the affirmation, and we said, I am inside of the divine love of the all expanding, and all divine love is inside me. I am a part of the all expanding, and the all expanding is a part of me. I am one as the all expanding, and the all expanding is one as me. I can succeed as a part of the all expanding and fail as an individual person. I can be all that I wish in the all expanding as long as my wish is to stay in the all expanding. I am never by myself. The all expanding is I am. The all expanding can, I can. The all expanding does, I do. So as we can see there, we have always been here, which is there, you understand? And we've always been around, you understand? There is no beginning or ending for us. We've always been here or part of things, you understand? Stillness, we were there when stillness or motion was born out of stillness, do you understand? And we continue to be, you understand? So as you can see, when you deal with Parpa'ut or the all expanding, you understand? You cannot add to it, you cannot take away from it, you understand? There is no outside of it. We are a part of it and always been a part of it as the movable part, let's say, you understand, as supreme beings in the flesh in this context. So join us on the Zoom platform for the first time. It is an interactive session, so feel free on your panel, on your devices, if you've not dialed in. If you need to adjust your audio settings for any reason, then the option here is selected on the left. The chat facility, feel free to use the chat and the reaction buttons, etc. If you're moved, so on and so forth, to give feedback in the chat. So anything broadly that's not questions, feel free to add that to the chat. Select everyone so that everyone can see what you're saying there as your distribution option. And then obviously fundamentally, don't sit here in ignorance. If you've got questions, ask them. I'm your student teacher for today, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. So don't sit there in ignorance if you don't understand something. So if we don't know, then we're going to say we don't know. We'll pick it up or clarify at the next class if necessary. So raise your hand is the first option, or the way you can ask a question, and you can come in live and ask your question directly. One of the facilitators will call out your name if you raise your hand, and then you'll see a message on the screen asking you to unmute yourself, and then simply you'll be able to come in and speak to us directly. If you've dialed in, I don't think anybody has, but if you have dialed in, then it's *9 to raise your hand, and then *6 to unmute yourself, and mute yourself back again when you finished asking your question. So you do have the power to unmute yourself once we give it to you. So we ask you just politely to stay muted once you've asked your question or finished your interaction, so you don't disturb the rest of the call. If you don't want to come through live, that is fine. Press the Q&A button and you can type your question in, and then one of the facilitators here will ask that question on your behalf. Okay, no poll questions today, but probably the next time in September we will have some kind of quiz, and these, I know people always tend to run from them, but they are there to help you really to start applying your reasoning capabilities to the answers that you're receiving. So if you understand something, generally speaking, you can apply it in different contexts. So we sort of test the retention and knowledge of the group, just so that you can, if there are things that you're struggling with, then it's best for us to know about it. It's not about being heavy on the call, although some subjects do require, as I say, us to kind of keep repeating over and over again, as our sort of master teacher has helped us over many years, so that things sort of stick. And the saying is, I think it's a famous statement in one of the books, we're moving from a linear progression to cyclical evolution. So we tend to go around the same subjects overstood at a higher level, you understand, of understanding each time, do you understand? And that's to say, the power when you're dealing with a difference between a master teacher and a teacher. Yeah, to take us or to transform us, as I say, from mortals back into deities again. And that starts off him himself, born Takoradi, Ghana, June 26, 1945, to Mary Abba Akran York, also known as Fatima Mariam. Fatima Maryam, March 10th, 1929, and has now crossed over to be one of our Slafu or ancestors on August 4th, 2012. So we are a matriarchal tribe, nation. We start off and understand that we respect the sacred feminine. We all came from that, and Wu-Sabat in the origin of the language, in fact, is feminine in origin. So that's where we start from. Both female and male came out of female in that regard. And as we've been doing these classes, we've obviously explained to you about the importance of the lotus flower. You can see the safaf or hieroglyph symbol there for the, I'd say not safaf, but the depiction of the lotus flower, pictorial representation of the lotus flower there, a symbol of regeneration in our culture, as well as it's symbolizing the female. His sacred masculine, also who contributed, Y chromosome for Dr. Malachi K.Z.York is Al-Hadi Abdul Rahman Al-Mahdi, born 1922. And again, from a famous family here, as you can see. So the Ghanaian side of the family comes from his mother's side. The Sudanese side of the family comes from this was his father's, the females of the father's side. You should understand if you understand about lineage and how that works. But some heavy hitters in terms of our historical names that we can see here. So certainly the one that sticks out on the page is his grandfather, Saeed Al-Hadi's grandfather, Saeed Muhammad Ahmed Al-Mahdi. Now, interesting enough, you don't see the Muslim world, as I say, recognize this individual in this context, because obviously he was an African dark-skinned individual, understood, who doesn't look like them, so they don't necessarily acknowledge his status as the Mahdi. But history books, you tend to find it, encyclopedias, different things of that nature do tend to acknowledge, or certainly that's how he was known as, and they refer to himself as, and that's how he's known as in history, as the Mahdi. And there was a film recently, in fact, which I was very surprised at, called June. I don't know if people have seen it, D-U-N-E. And the lead character there, not surprising, a white guy, no disrespect, but is called the Mahdi in the movie, or they were calling him the Mahdi in the movie, which was quite interesting. All the black people who were black in the movie had blue eyes, you know how they like to do. But yeah, it was quite interesting. You understand, if you look at the movie, the kind of story settings around it, all the trying to dress or whatever. But the hero in the movie was referred to in that movie. The June is referred to as the Mahdi in that movie. But I didn't see too much controversy related to that. I could be, maybe I had my head in the sand, but I didn't see too much controversy around that. Didn't see a lot of Muslims jumping up and down surrounding that. But let a black person be depicted from ancient Egypt, everybody acts like, you understand, the world's going to end. You understand? So you can see they love to be white. Sub races and various other races, they love to be white. When they're depicted as white, they don't complain. When Cleopatra was being depicted as white, they're not complaining. Put a black woman in that, cast a black woman now, as I say, they feel like the world's going to end. It is what it is. You understand? You can't deny who we are just because of your racism and your hate. Nonetheless, yeah, check that movie out if you're into movies. In fact, on the website, there's a section, United Sabians Worldwide, there's a section called Kanamat, which means cinema, or I think it's films or cinemas in that language, in our language. And yeah, it's got a list of movies, different movies, if you're into that, you understand, that you can watch, or the master teachers kind of said, watch this or watch that, and there's a certain message in there. It's quite a long list, you understand, going back to from, I think, 70s, you understand, so movies spanning sort of 50 plus years of interesting things to watch. Yeah, if you're into that. Now, yeah, so this is him at age 25, a sort of key date where he talks about receiving, I suppose, whole light beings. Manfred Kebab or Manfred Sabab mentioned about Outformation. So in the context of us and our story and our renewal, we talk about outformation, talking about things outside the status quo could be one assertion to it, but it's also talking about outside of the planet. So we receive our information or outformation from the above. So it's our outformational ancestors forming our informational present being. You understand? So information does keep you, as I think was expressed earlier, in a certain formation, and it was necessary in the renewal of our story for our ancestors to formulate one, as we've said many times in this class. Even in, as I say, in one generation, you can get a disconnect from parents to their children. Do you understand? In terms of them understanding or even them speaking even a similar language, certainly based on the environment that we find ourselves in today in this society. And one of the reasons for that is because you're at home and you're teaching one thing, and then when you send them, if you don't homeschool your children and you send them to school, they're teaching them something else. So you get a disconnect oftentimes if all of your culture, your education, your spirituality, etc., everything that you do is not aligned. Understand? So oftentimes we find ourselves, particularly if you're what they classify as immigrants in a country that's not of your origin, then you often find this sort of misalignment. And in a similar way, why do we say that? Well, it's to say that our ancestors obviously not lived part of Tharu in the context of them not even incarnating into the physical form, only going down to the fourth plane of existence, which is the mental plane, understood? So there will be a disconnect of how you would live and navigate in the physical, isn't it? So therefore, them birthing one from amongst us and being born and raised amongst us, and then designing a doctrine so that we could at least bring our mindset up to a level where we'd be even interested in finding out about who we are separate from what we've been taught in the school system and education system, etc., about our place in existence. It will be necessary for them to learn about us in order to formulate a doctrine that would connect. You understand? Because, as I say, they don't necessarily staying away from the physical in that context would know how we think, maybe, in a sense. So the best way to do that is to birth a teacher from amongst you, raised amongst you, and then, as I say, design a doctrine that would connect for us with the mindset, let's say, from the 1960s down to where we are here today. All Wu-Sabat, but necessary to deliver the medicine in a form, at least, that the people who are supposed to take it are going to ingest it so it can do what it's got to do to heal us mentally, physically, spiritually, esoterically, and, as I say, bring us together as one people once again. Okay, so let's crack on then back to where we were. I think we finished last week. Just bear with me. Any questions? And I'm just getting us to the place where we finished.
No questions.
Okay. Okay, just bear with me 1 second. So I'll jump into something else. Uh, 24,000 years now. Appreciate that. Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, sorry. I'll be talking for a minute as well. Manfred, yeah, can you check the spelling of that website there? I think it's not the right spelling, but yeah, appreciate the prompt. So the what was I saying now? Yeah, well, we had basically given you a breakdown of, or shows you a few videos. I think that's where we ended last week, of, I suppose, European, Euro-American scientists now talking to individuals about epigenetics and their understanding, really opening the door, going maybe against what was previously thought from their sort of Darwinistic origins into where we are at today. And we were showing you that because obviously in the proof on page 35, it was going through that in some detail, showing about generational trauma being proven with certain experimentation on mice. And then I suppose in the videos that we showed you last week, they sort of, agreed and then try and pull it back, say, well, it's not proven in humans, blah, 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 blah. But what the master teacher was explaining was, look, this is experimentation proves that what I taught you in the genetic KISS doctrine was in fact confirmed by scientists, today. And effectively what that is, for those who've not maybe been part of what we've been teaching previously, is that when you look at yourself, for example, you're not just one entity. You have to see yourself, as I say, it's almost like a top of an ancestral pyramid. Yeah, so you're at the top of the pyramid. Hopefully, you're the one making the decisions, and you have got your mother and father, grandmother and grandfather, great grandmother and great grandfather. So going down 4 generations on both sides of the family makes up you. Do you understand? So you are the head of a 30 piece pyramid. If your parents are alive, so let's say your mother and father are alive, then we would say that's 28. So, but if they pass, then let's say your mother passed, then it'd be 29. You understand? But you're the top of that, because you're supposed to be in the driving seat. And what it's reflecting is that within your bloodstream, you have the DNA from these 30, and it can be more depending on who they have mixed with in their lifetime. Because remember, a snapshot effectively is taken of that DNA from your, obviously 1/3 from your mother, 1/3 from your father, and the combination of the two make up you. Now, what they were explaining in the videos and the various ones that we were showing was that from an epigenetic point of view, excuse me, various traumas in some, they were focusing more on traumas. It doesn't have to be traumas, but certain traumas can basically affect the way the DNA is expressing itself. Do you understand? So in order to, the DNA, as you know, is many miles in length. Do you understand? In order for it to fit within the nucleus of a cell, it is sort of twisted, do you understand, or sort of wrapped around these things called histones. And when it's time for, I suppose, the wrapped DNA sometimes to unravel itself, when it needs to make proteins, or go through the process of so basically effectively when it exits out of a cell, so you have double DNA strands, you understand, in a double sort of helix fashion, but when it exits out the cell, for lack of a better word, ribosomes pick up the DNA code, 3 letters at a time, and they build out basically proteins, you understand? Excuse me. Proteins, you understand, out of sort of amino acids, do you understand? And so they build out proteins, and depending on these traumas can affect the way in which the DNA unravels or uncoils in certain instances, and then what aspects of the programming express itself or do not express itself, do you understand? So that can lead to different RNA interpretations of your build, you understand, based on experiences. So one of the things that we expressed, which they didn't express, but obviously what the master teacher given us that kind of understanding information in that context, is that the DNA effectively is the general in this context. So when we're looking at human beings, you have to understand that DNA is probably the newest iteration of those of that dramatic intelligence. You understand? So we start off in the first instance with ferrous nucleic acid. Do you understand? Ferrous nucleic acid. This is the DNA structure of the oldest or the original people of the planet Earth. Do you understand? Science people. Ferrous nucleic acid. Do you understand? Then we go. Ferrous nucleic acid gave birth, for lack of a better word, to ribonucleic acid. Do you understand? And then in the modern era, you have deoxyribonucleic acid. Do you understand? So RNA is older than DNA, and RNA interprets the DNA based on the environment that we're in. And we've given, obviously, previous examples of how that might work. By the name Hotep back, or Hatap as it would be known today, back in the day, gave a good example of that. So you're for example, you're a drug dealer, or you've got let's say you've got alchemy in your genetics. So you've got a family of alchemists, or you come from a family of alchemists, female, male, etc. Understand? And let's say that skill set or that experience is in your DNA. Well, if you're raised in, I don't know, you're raised in a city in London, you understand, coming out of a council estate, then you understand, you're going to be one to, and then let's say you've got a propensity for pharmacy. Yes, your skills may get interpreted a certain way based on that environment. So you may become a street pharmacist. Do you understand? Whereas maybe if you're raised in another area, I don't know, in England, I don't know, Meriden, you understand? And you go to, which is a high class area in the West Midlands, and you go to the best universities, you go to the best schools or whatever, you understand? Then you're going to become another type of pharmacist, the one maybe that works for a GlaxoSmithKline, do you understand? Or one of the big heavy hitters in that regard. So your pharmacy experience, let's say, is going to be expressed in what they would classify, in inverted commas, as the legal way of doing it. But maybe if you grew up in the wrong areas, you'd end up with the illegal way of doing it. Still the same thing being expressed, but in different environments. Understood? So what we was explaining to you last week is that if you fairly look at the master teacher's approach, you understand, which has been subject to some criticism by some authors looking at it over the years, but from a genetic point of view, if you understand the negative influence of, let's say, the interceptions of rape and promotion of let's say interracial sort of mixing, etc., without dealing with or expressing, let's say, or conveying some of the, well, they may see it as, they promote it as beneficial, but maybe not talk about some of the adverse impacts of that. And even in some countries, there is a sort of an agenda. Some of it's overt. Some countries it's a lot more hidden, of miscegenation. Do you understand? So basically, where they're trying to breed out certain darker skin races. We see that a lot in certain countries in South America over the generations. You understand? Where literally light is best. So try and breed out some of the darker races and the darker genes. And in places like the UK, for example, it's like they're obsessed with interracial dating now. We're not here to judge people's bedrooms. Love who you want to love. But if we're dealing with things fairly, and that's what your ancestors are about, is it okay? Well, have they been presented with the correct information? Have they presented with the factual information, and so they can make their own decision, not that they're part of somebody else's agenda that they're not even aware of? Do you understand? And therefore, when two people come together in a relationship, somebody benefits and somebody loses. Do you understand? This is the natural kind of way things happen. So we were explaining to you and showing you a few videos, just showing you, as I say, about that this generational impact is a real thing. Do you understand? So of things that have taken place in the past. So at the end of the day, somebody really wants to try and talk to you, so they're going to tell you about, Holocaust and other types of things that have happened, you understand, genocides in modern eras, and how that has had an adverse impact. Even things like, for example, the dropping of the bombs, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki, how that has had adverse impacts on those who were obviously alive when it happened, but then subsequently those born afterwards. Do you understand? And some of the things that happen as a result of birthing them future generations that were subject or alive when these things took place. So you understand at least that this takes place by way of 4 generations. So in every 4 generations, a generation can be 30 to 100 years. You understand? The genes shift. Yeah. So a person can't chat to you and talk to you about, well, that was 400 years ago, that was in slavery. If they understand who we are as human beings, that the trauma sits there, it will sit there and have a 400-year impact at least. Do you understand? And then when the genes shift, remember, as they're coming out of that 400 years, you're birthing in a new type of being or a new type of mindset that's the product of what took place 400 years ago. Do you understand? And then as we touched upon last week, these shifts or these changes that are going to take place in nature, obviously on the 9 side of things, there was a doctrine there supposed to be taught and ready to prepare the children, etc., or these generations for that new mindset and how they need to be raised and transformed, understood, to become dealing being with self-preservation, do you understand, and restoring and respecting or realigning back with natural nature and healing back the planet again and be part of that process, as opposed to the 6th side or the ghostational side waiting for that transformation to exploit it for their own means, to teach self-destructive behaviors, misalignment with natural nature, and actually setting up our people to be used and utilized, understood, to keep them mortals, so that basically they would never reach the point of supreme beings, for example, get the restoration of their spiritual powers, control of nature again, understood, for fear in their own minds, understood, that once we would be empowered once again, we would take revenge for all of the stuff that's happened for the last 6,000 years, and more acutely for the last 400 years. Now, that's not our nature, and we don't have to do none of that, because their own ancestors, if you understand their story, time limited in their what's referred to, so you have telomeres in an individual which sit on the end of people's chromosomes, and basically cells, it tells you how many times a cell is going to regenerate effectively. So your heart cells, your blood, all aspects of you are constantly rebuilding itself. Do you understand? And there's a set time, or set amount of time, that regeneration is going to happen within a single lifetime. Understood? Now, in the telomerase, which deals with a similar thing, but for the race, they were time limited by their own ancestors for a 6,000 year period. Do you understand? So in their Bible story, in their Bible story, myth, unproven stories, or whatever in the Torah, it talks about, as I say, their Lord giving them dominion over the planet for a set period of time. Do you understand? And so that was limited for a 6,000 year period. And so, 2060, there should be no more who is classified as the Leben Salal, or the white race, or the Mukas, or the Caucasians left on the planet. Do you understand? But the interesting thing is that who is Leben Salal, understand, or the actual white race, is actually very limited. You understand? Who actually really fits into that category, understood? And even then, if they mix in with somebody who has stronger genes, understood, or more dominant genes, that can have an impact or change, for some of them at least, their fate. You understand? Especially the females. So who is white? You understand? In nature's terms, I'm talking, and there's more, and who is not obviously white. A lot of people think they're white and they're not really. You understand? by natural nature's terms, if you want to use scientifically, not the social definitions that we see in certain instances used. Any questions? Let's go through these.
No questions. No questions.
Yeah, no questions my side.
All right. Okay. So let's crack on then. So I think we got to let's start from 154. So it says so talk about trauma. Let's say being passed on. Let's start from 53. So 153. This passed on for only 4 generations to both male and female mice. So it's discussing an experiment that showed generational trauma transition within the genes. 154. This proved what you're exposed to in this life affects your next 4 generations. It confirms what I taught you of the genetic kiss, and also what you watch, hear, eat, your fears, sexual habits, likes and dislikes pass on 4 generations. That also includes health, disease, and mental state. 155. So the mates you exchange bodily fluids with become part of your next 4 generations, and you inherit from each male his past 4 generations, which can affect your vanas tasu feminine, fatir al fatar natural nature, and make you more masculine, both physically and mentally. So you understand that women obviously are supreme beings, as we are, which we would classify sacred masculine and sacred feminine, exhibiting exemplary behaviors within the Wu-Sabat culture. Do you understand? The highest of us as the Negroid race. But in those characteristics, those inherent characteristics, we are there to propagate. So when 2 Nagaru or Negroids come together, understand, they're supposed to produce star children. Do you understand? So when soulmates come together within that, they produce star children. Do you understand? So in that regard, that's how they were. So that's how we're known as. Yeah. So our role is to produce supreme beings. It's not just to produce children. It's to produce supreme beings. Yeah. To maintain nine mind within the race. You understood? Or the expression of nine mind within the race. So there's full alignment with us here physically referred to as their descendants, and an uninterfered with chain linking us with the mental side of things, so the mental reservoir of information, you understood, and the frequency, the spiritual frequency linked to our race, which Wu-Sabat is broadcast on. So it's effectively the different races with their spiritual science. When you get into the science of that spirituality, it's talking about us linked in, to a frequency that Wu-Sabat is being broadcast on, and that we are completely locked into that frequency with no white noise, no interference, etc., etc. Because, as I say, physically and what you are racially is linked to your ancestors, and that is the purpose of what people in inverted commas refer to as religion. Do you understand? It retains, or supposed to maintain, the link between, as I say, you here who are both etheric and physical, or spiritual and physical, to keep you linked in with the spiritual world, because that's the next stage of your ascension journey. Obviously, you don't become soul. Even in their Bible, they talk about, I think it's Genesis chapter 2, verse 7. Yeah, the Lord breathed into man, and then man became a living soul. Do you understand? So you don't become living as soul until you die. Yeah, until you shed the physical body. So you don't get to live as a soul until you shed the physical body, or the car, in the sound, which is the physical body. So the reality in this context is that we're locked in, or supposed to be locked into a certain frequency, and that's how we receive that outformational link. You understand? Which informs, as we touched upon earlier, keeps us in the correct formation for us according to who we are by natural nature's design. You understand? It is unnatural for us to be, which we had to do in this society, living in the image and after like somebody else in order to survive. Understood? So in that, coming back around again, is to say that women are designed to propagate life. Do you understand? So in that context, just like the soil of the earth, yes, nature is a reactive state. You understand? So within the woman, she has the capabilities to propagate life. And in fact, if you want to start a genealogy on this planet, for example, you need to utilize the womb of a woman to sustain a race within that can survive within this planetary atmosphere without the need of apparatus or other equipment. You understand? In order to live in the environment. If you think about many movies you've seen of human beings going to other planets, they're not geared up, understood, to, breathe the atmosphere on other planets. Oftentimes, you understand? So they have to wear whatever, a spacesuit or other apparatus, depending on the, the age of the movie or whatever. It might be a big spacesuit, say, dealing with, whatever, Star Trek and things in the future. They still show them in a spacesuit if the air is not breathable for human beings. You understand? So that unique link between of the woman being the gateway to physical life here on the planet Earth is something that's been cultivated over trillions into millions, billions into millions of years. Do you understand that link? So a very precious tool. Now, when we say it's in a reactive state, because there's no judgment in there, and this is some of the reasons I won't get into that road for now, unless there's questions on it. But there's no judgment in there. It's not a person saying, well, it should be applied in this situation or not applied in that situation. And the reason why you know that is because, for example, in certain places, maybe in South America or in other places around the world, they plant stuff into the ground, for example, and they grow poppies, for example. Yeah. Now, those poppies may be converted into certain substances that may be used to make drugs that provide pain relief in hospitals, or they can be used to convert it into that provide drugs to get people high in clubs and whatever, provide some escapism from life. One is considered to be illegal, and one is considered to be positive and legal. Do you understand? One's negative and evil, one's considered to be positive and legal. So in that context, so the point is that the earth is not making a judgment on what the poppy or what the things that are being grown is going to be used for. You understand? So it's not making a judgment to say, well, you're going to grow cocaine. That poppy is going to lead to the growth of cocaine, which is going to kill children and destroy societies or whatever. Therefore, I'm not going to allow it to be grown. It doesn't work like that. Do you understand? So if you do necessary things to trigger the rules, then the result will arise in the sand. This is why, let's keep it 100, because what they taught you in religion about, God is in control of everything, etc., etc. Well, when your God must be, I'm not going to be offensive, but your God must be up. You understand? Because he's got no power. Or he doesn't mind allowing evil to propagate itself throughout the world. So if it was a case that there's judgment in there, then how, when a woman gets raped, how does she become pregnant? Why would you, if you had control of everything, well, if you could avoid people getting raped in the first place, I think that would be even better. But somebody getting raped and then a child is, you understand? A woman gets impregnated by the rapist. You understand? And then there's rules that kick in that say, well, if you kill a child, you understand? Killing a baby in the womb is the same as killing a human being regardless. So there's consequences that arise out of that. So why would you allow the process of conception to take place when there's, sort of negativity or evil in that context arising from the act? You understand? So we're living in an autonomous self-propagating environment. Do you understand? So there's no judgment in there. It's a reactionary state. So we have these qualities and abilities, and say we as a race have these qualities and abilities to propagate life. So if you misuse them, then we get the results of misuse. If you use them correctly, then we get the results of using it correctly. Do you understand? So irrespective of what somebody classifies it as, if they say, well, that's legal and that is illegal, that's got nothing to do with natural nature. It's got nothing to do with nature. So they can tell you it's legal all day. Doesn't mean it aligns itself with that's something that's progressive for your health or progressive for your ascension, etc., etc. Just because somebody said it's legal, yeah. Drinking McDonald's milkshakes is legal, but you understand, there's nothing stopping you from buying 20 if you wanted to, and having 20 in one go if you wanted to do that. No one's going to stop you. So the first one is going to cause you damage. 20, you understand, probably, it could be fatal for you, but no one's going to stop you because it's legal to do that. You understand? Now, other things are considered to be illegal, which there's effort to put you in to stop you from doing that. For example, cocaine or whatever, or A-class drugs, etc., etc. They're going to stop you from doing that, and there's laws around that. Either way, if you ingest legal or illegal stuff, it can still have a negative impact on your structure. So the point is, there's no judgment, you understand, in this context, and so you have to understand your qualities. You have to understand how to manage, as we've said before in these classes. You are a universe, so you have to learn to manage your universe. Do you understand? And the decisions that you take are obviously going to impact not just you, but as I say, the other life forms that are, as you say, keeping you alive inside your physical structure. Do you understand? So you are the god of you in that sense, and so the decisions that you make are going to have, in many cases, are going to have either positive or agreeable or disagreeable impacts on you. So knowing, as we refer to this as incarnation challenges, is because you being a supreme being born into a physical body, do you understand? Yeah. Then there are challenges that you have to face. And the mind, remember, in the mind scroll, it always told you that the mind is not the body. You understand? So the mind, obviously, as I say, is connected to the body by way of the brain. Do you understand? But that's not where its origin is. So you are projecting, or a piece of that mental reservoir is projecting itself down into you as the human body, and certainly on the fourth plane of existence, as we have read in Holy Tablets out chapter 7, previous class, that we refer to it. We are referring to us as human beings, are referring to that as the soul. You understand? So in this context, it provides a mechanism for our minds to express itself here in the physical. Do you understand? And so in that context, your mind, as the master teacher explained it in that scroll, is always looking to avoid discipline. It's always looking to do what it wants to do, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's always got the best interests for you at heart. So we have to get control. That's what the nine mind is talking about, because nine mind rules over 6 body. Do you understand? So the mind must rule over the body. You understand? This is the shift that needs to take place for us to get back to that supreme being again, supreme mentality. Do you understand? Supreme expression, supreme living. Again, the mind must rule the body. Understood? And so what we're seeing here in the manipulation coming out of the next 4 generational change, coming out of slavery, where we, as I say, or the kidnapping, where now we've become, obviously, before, you understand, our ancestors, when they first were taken, they couldn't even look in the white man's eyes because of the beating that was taking place. Now the kids are a mindset, you sort of thing. Do you understand? Turn the hat backwards. You understand? Good, bad became good. You understand? We changed language, we rebelled against the status quo. Now, unfortunately, with the shift that's taken place in the context of women now, and the rise of female leadership, as the planet and nature shifts us back to matriarchal liberty, what we're seeing is there that the sexual expression is now being abused and misused to muddy the waters, or muddy the genetic waters, you understand, of males' misuse of their sexual powers, and obviously female misuse of their sexual powers, not understanding the rules of nature. Remember, the spell, which is for those not been on understanding of that before, as classified by the master teacher, is talking about the mental disease that our people have suffered from, particularly for the last 6,000 years, which has caused us to go from, as a famous quote from a version of mine called Hatap Wa or Hatap Wahan, was, we've gone from building pyramids to building spliffs. Do you understand? And so that's showing a degradation that's happened mentally for our people, which obviously Wu-Sabat is designed to restore. But the first iteration of spell is called the spell of a man in ancient Egypt, and that referred to the spell of amnesia. The second iteration of the spell is called the spell of Kingu, where we started the spell of religion, where we started to look outside of self, understood, and then instead of seeing ourselves as that deity, as it's referring back to us in Partakyud, reminding us that we're a part of existence, we always have been. Now we started to look outside, do you understand? And seeing, worshipping objects external to ourselves, not seeing us as part, but separated, do you understand? So, whatever, people worshipping the sun, worshipping the moon, do you understand? This is where the spell of religion come in, a separation now between us, and like we're some lowly being worshipping some higher being, do you understand? We don't worship our ancestors, we're a part of them, and they of us. That's why you don't bow down to your ancestors, do you understand? In that, assuming you don't kneel, in front of your ancestors, you understand? You may bow out of respect, but you don't kneel, you understand? So you're not worshipping them. They are part of us, and they are part of you. So respect is shown, but not worship, understood? And so the last aspect of the spell, which they refer to in the monotheistic religions or in the Bible, is referred to as a spell of Leviathan, do you understand? Which is basically dealing with the serpent's law, understood? And so that is a spell of money, or the love of money. They say in their book is the root of all evil, do you understand? Or people do things for, you understand, for money, or anything for money, any kind of behavior for money or whatever. So that, and money's really, you understand, it's no, somebody else is determining what its value is. You understand? It doesn't really have any value in real life other than, do you understand, the labor of human beings is what sits behind it, you understand? Because the days of gold backed currencies are over, do you understand? So today it's backed by the labor of human beings being traded on various markets around the world, you understand? This is why when countries suffering, you see them, what they do, they raise the retirement age, you understand, of when people retire, obviously, because they must be raising money on these markets, understood, for current and unborn human beings. Sad to say, but this is how the world works today. So all of these different aspects of the spell, understood, have kept the mind suppressed, do you understand, leading up to a point where, as I say, they understand, they're watching the clock and they're watching what's taking place in nature, even if you are not, you understand? And so what you're seeing here is that when the master teacher was out, and even while being in prison, what he sought to do is keep the Nagaru up to date with what's going on. Do you understand? In fact, when he was out, and even today, trying to keep us 10 years ahead of what was happening, a minimum of sort of 10 years ahead of what was happening. So we'll be at the forefront, you understand? Because you don't know what's going on in the world. You understand? I won't say going on in the world, I'm saying really going on. Understood? So many things are taking place on a global level, and certainly the extraterrestrial involvement that black people, in a sense, are just simply just not in the race. Yeah, so of the races, in a sense. So if we're not careful, we're destined to, finish in last place and be subservient, or retain being subservient to other races, do you understand, in second class place. Even though our genetic capability, our genetic entitlement, understand, our genetic agreement says differently, understood? Yeah. So the misuse of our sexual powers is obviously the devil being ready for that shift that was due to take place, and being ready where we are not in a position to take rulership, then they will always be in a position to exploit our failures. Understand? So Master Secret number 1, it explained to us that you're not in this position for what you have done, but rather for what you have failed to do. Understand? Yeah. So our lack of development, our lack of application of Wu-Sabat on a global level, do you understand, has left us behind in the race. Overstood for where we're supposed to be. Now, yes, we've got the thorn in our side, you understand, for the last 6,000 years, referred to as the Mukassar or the Caucasian, who has obviously hindered our progress, but it is what it is. Do you understand? If we don't change our ways, and that's not everything's going to be fixed in this generation. We have to think in a 400-year mindset and mentality, so that, as I say, propagating forward, the children and the children's children and the children's children are going to be the ones who really, you understand, where the genes have been sort of cleaned up, and the hold that the kind of Western world has over us, and even the Eastern world now holds over us, versus what we should be according to our natural design, and basically in the image and likeness of our own ancestors. It's going to take that time to achieve that. So 156. So it shows, so this is obviously exchanging these fluids. It shows in your hands, feet, and your khatat body shape, your voice and overall feminine you is affected. Yes, you've taken too much male DNA. 157. From being a tomboy to body muscles and moustache and chin hairs, desires to do male sports, dressing in male outfits, hang out with the Fateu boys, and overall non-feminine female. 158. This is passed on to Fateh Tatu girls, often by their past generations or their mothers, more than 4 exchanges of male bodily fluids sexually. Don't believe me, check the science out. Understand? So we were informed about this, whether we were ready for that next level of information, which really was coming, I suppose, a lot of time from when the Holy Tablets released 1996, and then the Black Book was released 1998, and then the Black Book 2 really deals with a lot of, or was going into, or would have gone into, if properly released. Remember, there was at that Black Book, or the Sacred Records of Atum Arayet, as it was known as, there were 19 parts of that book, and only one was really officially released. And so part 2 was really start to go into about genes and race, and really get into our understanding about that. And obviously then the master teacher was kidnapped, and so that those 19 parts of that book were never released. Do you understand? So really, and it was were we ready for that mentally as well, to get into the type of genetic conversations that we need to have? You understand? That, for example, that Malcolm X, you understand, controversially maybe, but because he was of mixed genes and genetics, for example, was he destined to betray the Honorable Elijah Muhammad simply for the fact of his genes? You understand? And yep, so as children, or a child like mine, we can big up Malcolm X, for example, and big up what he done. But being mixed amongst other maybe, darker skinned individuals, was he intimidated by that? Was he more racist, do you understand, than they were, because of his insecurities and not because of the sincerity necessarily, or full sincerity of what he was talking about? Because when he came up or switched or whatever to Sunni Islam, then he denied all the racism that he helped to propagate. You understand? The Black Power movement and so on. So he denied it when he now came in contact, when he went to Mecca, for example, with other races. You understand? He dashed all that behind to some degree. You understand? And got rid of all that racism after firing up everybody previously more than anybody else. So was it coming from an absolutely state of perfection? Do you understand? When we say that in Wu-Sabat, we mean, does intention and action, do they match? This is what you're keep reincarnating in to be born, is to achieve that state of perfection, where your intention and your actions match. You understand? And it's much more difficult to achieve that than what people realize. To have no adverse or whatever, or positive, no intention, but just to do what's needed to be done. Do you understand? As we see the sun does, irrespective of whether you acknowledge it or doesn't, it does its job as a supreme being. Yeah, sons, they do their job, yeah, of what is tasked for them to do. Not in task, but that's who they are, as they live according to their nature. Understood? But in certain instances, as I say, was that imperfect? Was it imperfect decisions that were being made? Meaning to say that intention so the action could have been right and progressive, but maybe the reason behind it was not. You understand? So you've got imperfect behavior. Do you understand? Like somebody might say, for example, that like you get I don't know, these pro-black advocates, for example, pro-blackness. You understand? Black this, black that, black this, black that, black, everything black. You understand? But you got a white woman as your partner. You understand? So yeah, or in reverse, we get black women. One I can think of in particular, I'm not going to mention their name. Everything black is what's wrong with black people. Black this, black that, black this, black that. This is wrong with black people. That's wrong with black people. That. And you got a white husband. Do you understand? So the biggest decision that you can make, yeah, in terms of where you invest your genes, you've made the opposite decision. Now, does it mean that a person can't be pro-black and be in an interracial relationship or whatever? Well, it doesn't mean you can't be pro-black. There's a lot of people who've done a lot for black people in history who haven't had a black partner. Point is, though, it's an imperfect situation. If I came on here, for example, and I was bigging up cryptocurrency, everything crypto, there's investing crypto is life, crypto's going to change your life, and I'm going on and on about crypto, and then somebody asks a question and say, well, how much money, Nabab, have you got invested in crypto? And I come back to the audience and I say, I've got no money in crypto. So I could have been giving you all this information about crypto. It could be correct, the right type of information. But then when you ask me, have I got my money invested in crypto? I say no. Does that weaken what I've just said? Yeah, if my intention and the action, the two things don't necessarily match up, it weakens what I've said. You understand? So that's the issue. It's an imperfect situation. So sometimes the intention or the reason why the person was doing something doesn't match maybe the purity of the actions. Do you understand what I'm saying? And we can be led down certain roads, as I say, with that kind of Malcolm X situation. So in that situation, it's because sometimes in certain races, even in mixed races, black can be dominant, for example, but the trauma, you understand, maybe of the slavery situation was not necessarily passed down in the genes because you had these foreign genes in there. Do you understand? So maybe the race loyalty or things of that nature were not there present in the genes, and this could have been predicted. Now, when you're aware of something, even though it could be part of your nature, can your mind override your physical urges or decisions that may be driven from your inner self, your inner beings, I should say, of your ancestors or different ancestral elements within you that are maybe influencing or can have an influence on your decisions? Of course it can. Do you understand? Mind can rule over body once you're aware. But were we ready at that time for that real detailed genetic conversation? Or in the wrong hands, that information, would we have been sitting there pointing the fingers at each other? Do you understand? And creating a scenario of, well, one's better and one's less or whatever, not understanding really what's taking place inside of our genes or our DNA. Do you understand? So it's a conversation that needs mature people in the room, because when you hear certain knowledge or whatever about genes and genetics, we get into that real problem and solution conversation, for ourselves, yeah, sometimes it's a tough listen. You understand? If we've done certain things that, as I say, maybe that kind of checks us out. That in this lifetime, it might check us out of a certain type of destiny. But then you have to understand, who are you living for? Are you living for you, or are you living for your race? You understand? Because your transformation in this generation leads to what? It can lead to transformations in the future generations. You understand? So you taking it on board, you understand? And if we were, again, in the right environments, then the children, and then their children, and then the children's children. So in the next 400 years, what kind of shift would we have created by adopting Wu-Sabat now? You understand? From the 70s down. So this was always the plan of your ancestors, to seek that change and transformation, and in order to protect, if necessary, protect their children, their true children, who really embraced, you understand, and want to be in their image and after their likeness, will obviously lift them from this planet, or open up back those gateways that gave us a way and a mechanism, to understand, to avoid extinction level style events that this planet has gone through many times in its story, to keep the genes pure, understood, or to retain the Nataru genes that originally placed here to seed life on this planet. So, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, so okay, so it says, don't believe me, check the science out. So the genetic kiss doctrine, you exchange fluids with somebody, you understand? Then you take on their 4 generations, because in each cell of a human being is a copy of the person's DNA, and that holds not only those 30 ancestors that we were talking about, but all those people as well within certain periods that potentially they mixed within. Do you understand? So if the DNA has not been, it takes about 9 years to remove foreign DNA from a female system, unless it's accelerated by way of ritual. And so, do you understand, depending on when this snapshot was taken and who the person sort of mixed in with within a certain period, the body might have not had time to flush out wanted mixing or unwanted mixing. Do you understand? And so therefore you can have genes inside you that are in conflict with each other. In a sense, the same way you've got, when you look outside, you see external conflict. Well, inside, if those genes are exchanged, a DNA exchange, then you're going to have those conflicts taking place within. So this is why we say the enemy within, because by raping, you understand, or mixing in with our people, which we know those reasons were for blood, because originally they were hemophiliacs, so they wanted to, the reason for slavery is for blood, or the kidnapping is for blood, not for labor. You understand? To try and breed out the hemophilia in their genes, understood? And so therefore that being in the genes is going to cause internal conflict, because there was external conflict. So when the two now mix together, if you put member of Ku Klux Klan and, I don't know, Nation of Islam in one room together, there's going to be conflict. You understand? Or any black person for that matter. There's going to be conflict. You understand? So if that's going to happen outside, then guess what's going to happen on the inside? So we have to understand these things. So I'm not saying, say, if the person chose to engage in an interracial relationship, for example, the hate that might be received if there was family members who are anti of it on the outside, well, guess what happens when you exchange DNA? That conflict is going to take place on the internally. And is it going to manifest itself in the children? Yes, it will do as well. You understand? So if you're not aware of these things, which they don't teach you, everybody wants to say, oh, like it's a Benetton advert, and they want to promote the positive side, but don't want to teach what the negatives are, because they think everybody's dumb, or they want everybody to be in a state of ignorance. Do you understand? Because the truth about genes, the truth about genetics is going to show, well, some races on the planet have dominant genes, and some races on the planet have recessive and inferior genes. Do you understand? Some races were developed, understand, simply for genetic warfare to be a disease. And they don't want the world to know, because obviously through cinema, through television, through these mechanisms, through the media, they have taught the world that they are the gods. They are the supremes. You understand? The supreme beings. You understand? They're the ones to be worshipped. You understand? Which can be done and propagated by way of the media. You understand? But when we get into the reality and the scientists really start going into the genes, and this is where racism kind of kicks in. So basically, if we're gonna eliminate racism, then fairly we have to deal with facts and what's true. Do you understand? Because you maybe have less, and maybe it's perceived that I have more by way of gifts in nature, then what, we're not going to tell the truth about genes now? Do you understand? If you're born 5'7" and somebody else is 6'4" or whatever, they're going to have a different type of existence than you have. You just, as human beings, have to make do with what you've got. You understand? You can still be successful at either height. You understand? So why is it a problem now when it comes to genes? Yeah, you don't want to tell the truth because of your story doesn't line up with what you've been lying and propagating to the world, you understand, for the last, 6,000 years or more now. Obviously, now today in the modern era, most of their power is derived through what's been shown in the media on television. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, and trick the world. You understand? Trick the world into thinking that you're supreme being, but when we go to the genes and genetics, then we find out, well, there's a lot of inferiority there. Not our fault, is it? Blame your God. God is responsible for that in your context. Your Lord God is responsible for that. You understand? Or your lords, plural. Or your gods, plural. They are responsible, not us. You understand? But we understand within your genes, it was hate was placed in there to hate us. Yeah, that's why you can do many of the atrocities that were done to us and people feel no way about it. You understand? Until maybe the modern era now, you're seeing, a lot of some of the Mukasu children rebelling against us. Say, listen, what our ancestors did, that wasn't cool. You understand? That wasn't cool. You understand? And so I know my man. We went to school together. I mean, we were. He's cool. He's not as what said. You can't say that, mum. You can't say that, dad. Yeah, and attitudes then start to change. Yeah, around certain things. So racism, as I say, is a cancer of human existence, really. But as I say, we have to understand and have fairness and truth, you understand, and justice by everybody knowing who everybody is. Do you understand? Really who they are on the planet and who created them. You understand? Because it's not the same. We've got these myths that are propagated through books like the Torah, understand, the Bible and the Quran, and other religions that want to put their race as the top when they're not really the top. You understand? Give them credit for things that they shouldn't be given credit for. You understand? They don't want to be honest. Yeah. So if we were honest, then we can have a planetary truth. You understand? Planetary truth. Yeah, the truth about the planet of where we all came from. You understand? Who created us? A planetary truth. You understand? Which what Wu-Sabat brings fairly. You understand? Fairly. Yeah, dealing with science of facts. Yeah, not belief. Yeah, we're not on no black supremacist thing. We're just dealing with facts. Understood? And we have a lot more positives in our story than the negatives that have been propagated by many about our people. Now, so 159. We must protect our DNA after living in the image of the Nabab beast in the West or being invaded by them in our homeland of Africa, India, Asia, and Australia. 160. He came in seeking not just to invade our lands, but also desired to invade our DNA sexually, exchange his Jawed, wicked, evil, unnatural nature with our own, which has made us black devils following his wicked, evil ways of living. You see? Yeah. So made us. So that transformation has taken place by way of exchanging our genes. There was a clear separation. Well, at one time, I say, depending on people on this call from different places around the world, but certainly in the UK, there was a clear separation several decades ago of certain behaviours. It said, well, that's what they do. You understand? Now, more power to them, but that's what they do. We don't do that. Now, in this generation, you can't make that separation, whether that's sleeping with dogs or kissing animals in the mouth and all this kind of nonsense, or dogs in the bed. Yeah, you at one time you could say, well, that was them. Yeah, and be confident. You understand that one out of, you understand, probably 1 million black people. You understand? Yeah, that maybe there was one out of 1 million of us that probably indulged in certain behaviours. Now you can't say that. Yeah, and a lot of that has come from black so-called stars in the media, you understand, social media stars, imitating, yeah, as it referred to the beast man, yeah, or the beast, yeah, sleeping with animals or kissing them in the mouth. So guess what? If you kiss a dog in its mouth, guess what becomes part of your DNA? It is how sexual diseases within the human genome came around. Understand? Yeah, because certain races of people, or a particular race of people, was having sex with animals. And nature was like, hell no. Yeah, its own immune system kicked in and said, hell no. Yeah, dogs have sex with other dogs to produce dogs. Dogs don't have sex with human women to produce what? You understand? So certain sexual diseases, which are now prevalent within the genome, are rising because of certain races' misbehavior, cultural misbehavior. And now we're imitating those things now. So what's next for our people? You understand? We already blonding off our hair. You understand? Whenever we get success, it seems people want to blonde their hair. Yeah? Let's say it's not black entertainment television at one time. It was blonde entertainment television. You understand? Because people living or imitating an image of what would be weaker genes. Now, a black person blondes their hair. What are they showing? It's showing what I'm imitating. I'm imitating a person with weaker genes than my natural genes, if they really look at it fairly. You understand? That's what we're doing. That's what it means by living in the image of the beast, because you're regressing. For you, who has true hair on the planet, curly hair, you understand? When we straighten our hair, we are making ourselves look like the impression. We're basically doing an impression of fur. We're transferring our hair into fur. Yeah, so what we're doing, we're living in the image of the beast, or a beast, an animal. That's what we're doing an impression of. We wear high heels. Yeah, we're doing the impression of how a dog walks. A dog walks, you understand, on its front, the front part of its foot. And high heels were developed to enable people who had a curvature in their spine to walk more upright. You understand? Now us, well, I say us, but the hip-hop generation, for example, constantly wearing trainers, for example, caused us to walk like simians. Do you understand? So one of the corrections in the schools that we went through that was made was the Ben York school or whatever, which was to get us back in cowboy boots. So we were wearing cowboy boots and heels and rayon suits, etc., to get us to walk upright once again. Yeah, because we were regressing. You understand? With monkeys, we've seen some people walking about, for example, instead of walking with their hands, flowing sort of side by side with their palms facing their body, for example. Some people are walking and their palms are facing backwards. Yeah, that's a monkey trait, simian trait. Yeah, so regression in the genes. Yeah, so these are things, as I say, that the plethora of things that this incarnated being sent by way of our Nathar, our ancestors, our overseers, as looking at and saying, damn, we got to fix that, we got to fix this, we got to fix that, you understand, amongst them, and they don't listen. Or let's say, let me correct that. They don't listen to people who look like them. We're difficult people to teach. Hell, you understand, we'll destroy our leaders if we get the opportunity to. And that's because of the type of genes that is placed within us. You understand? 161. And because of him invading us mentally and physically and geographically, we now act like, talk like, think like, stink like, and have his diseases, viruses, sickness, habits, addictions, lust, perversions, all enforced and reinforced by their books like the Bible, Quran, novels, fictions, and his schooling and cinema, TV, and CDs. 162. Yaanuwn, name it. He programs it to enforce a program into your mind, khatat body, your ta'atuftat, or let's say it again, ta'atuftat, emotions, and sha'aru'at, feelings, attractions, love life, how you see others, how you see yourself, all brain dirtying by the race of devils. Kharatu, children of Adamite daughters, and Jawed, wicked rapists, sons of God. Genesis 6, 1-5. Read it. Yes, that's talking about the sons of God, or those 200 who came down in that story and raped the daughters of men. You understand? You also find in a separate story outside the Bible that they've given you in the book of books of Enoch. You understand? I'm sure you can purchase. Look those up. You understand? In the books of Enoch, you see about these, 200 fallen angels, or those who came down. Yeah. 163. Protect our DNA. Protect our mitochondrial DNA. You can restore your divine Vanas Tasu, feminine, Yachasat genes, no matter how many Ayashu males you exchange body fluid with, yet not with the Caucasoid male. 164. You are the black supreme balancement. You have the strongest genes. You can overpower their invasions of your body. Clean yourself inside out and outside inward. Wu-Sabat, and Samuel has used that, the updated term, is step 1 to step 9. 165. You will overpower them inside your Khatat body. Any race or sub-race who mix in with the Nagaru Negroids becomes divine, even if they just have an intercourse or exchange of fluids. 166. Yet afterwards, if they return to the Adamite or Canaanite race, they will kill the divine Yachasat genes being attacked by the alien Caucasian sperm and Manan semen, just as is done when the Matal sperm enters the Raham womb for the child. They fight that one to reach the Hathath ovum. 167. So once the destructive, unnatural Matal sperm enters the liquid stream of the female of any race except their own, his Jawed, wicked Matal sperm, will destroy the other races in her system. 168. This disease, male Caucasoid Matal sperm, will attack all others in the Khatat body and destroy them and body fluids, your Damam blood, your Sakaf at cells, and his is hemophilia. As hemophiliac, lacking hemoglobin, the hemia red coloring material in blood corpuscles created by the plasma, the fluid part of the Damam blood lymph. 169. This is part of the disease passed on to the Adamu Salal race, the Adamite race, by the Kamau Pleiadians. 170. And then the red ruddy race of Adamite was cursed with barasi, leprosy, in Genesis 9:25, to become white as snow. Cursed seed of Paanu, Canaanites, Leviticus 13, verses 1-59, and Leviticus 14:34. In the same way the Lord God said, place leprosy, in the house, in the genetics of the Canaanites. 171. So when the Adamites entered the land of Canaanites, they mixed and then became many Sabaratu, hues of white people, then mixed with Edomites. So you see in the Caucasoid races 6 Sanafu species from their original. Understand? 1 Adamites, flush, ruddy. 2 Canaanites, white, with freckles, and 3 Edomites, reddish, pinkish. 1 Celtics, 2 Celtics, 3 Celtics. And so 177, 172. There's 6 or VI, yeah, becomes kindred or kin. So you get king. So in his story, you see VI kings, yeah, but they say Vikings, yeah, kindreds, yeah, 6 kindreds, kin, relative, family, kind, essential or alike, kindred of like nature, similar, kind, red, yeah. So you see the ruddy red or the Adamite. You understand the kindred? It's a kindred spirits, yeah, but it's obviously said a kind of red. Yeah? So they don't hide it; it's right in front of you. Their race of kind red, 6 kinds of Adamites: 1 Gaelic Welsh, 2 Irish Hibernian, 2 Polish Slavic, 4 Scottish Danes, 5 Dutch Netherlands, 6 Germanic Austrian. So we'll come back to this slide. All of these are the original Nordic Scandinavians who spread world over, mixing their Yakasat genes to become many sub-races. So obviously we see here that the Scandinavians, Scandinavians, which we get these 3 different types of spelling within our doctrine: Celtics, Celtics, and Celtics, all really saying the same thing, but relating to different types of mixing that took place, are classified basically with the Rh negative blood types. You understand? And then we get the breakdown of the various or the root seeds, let's say, of the Mukassu race, as they are classified by tribe. You understand? Now, we talked to you, I think, several different classes ago about what's referred to as physical ethers, and how physical ethers relates to the species within a race. So in the black race, you've got 9 physical ethers. Do you understand? And obviously in the Caucasian race, 6 in the females and then 5 in the males. Yeah, you say you add the 6 and the 5 together. Symbolically, that's where you get the 11 sons of Canaan from, which symbolizes, as the Master Teacher broke down, in a sense, 11 different graftation projects which took place in various different places around the world, pertaining, as say, to the Caucasian races. They would have it. So this is the history that they know but won't say. You understand? Or put a different spin on it. You understand? Many people, I don't know, I haven't seen it, but many people watched a Netflix series called Vikings, for example, and interesting. You understand? They're in love with that kind of lifestyle, whatever the case may be. It's an interesting program, not knowing the real truth about this project of the Pleiadians, of them trying to say create a genealogy here, saying, or create a race of people, a sub-race into this planet. So Rh negative blood type, so quite pretty important. So this is a diagram, shown this before in some previous classes, but we'll get into it now. So what do you see here? So we see 46. Importantly, the title is important. This title is important because somebody might look at this and say, well, Nabab, or Sabians, you understand? I say myself, but they might say, well, the Master said you guys didn't come from monkeys. So on this page on your book, it's showing a diagram where you are talking about monkeys in holy tablets and things of that nature. Well, obviously that is true. We were the mermen and merwomen, or are the mermen and merwomen of this planet. We came out of the waters of this planet. That is our origin, not from apes. Yeah, so Darwin theory. But this top title in the Proverbs of Yaanuwn is really important because it talks about alien blood weapon genocide. Yeah, so in fact, if you really look at the context of what's being shown here, is you're looking at a methodology of using the tailless monkey And on the Rh negative side, you're using the tailed monkey. So the interception in the genes to introduce Rh positive blood type was to prepare against the weapon of Rh negative blood types. Hence why the tailless monkey was introduced at a certain point within the genome. Understand? Of obviously key species we see here around the planet. Us here, Rh positive 9 species. The Dravidian or East Indian you see here, 7 species, and Rh positive, the Asians or the Orientals, 3 physical ethers or species here with the Rh positive. You understand? So, but then the hybrids that were created, Rh negative. You understand? Blood type 6 species in here, or 6 physical ethers as they would classify as. So, yes, so they would sit there and look for what's the word? Inconsistencies or contradictions within the doctrine, but we've got to pay attention to what's going on. Understand? So a certain approach, a disease was to be introduced into the human genome to wipe out, you understand, other races. Yes, but a counter plan was developed that protected those races against, let's say, the introduction of this Rh or rhesus negative blood type. Do you understand? So, as with a lot of antidotes, isn't it correct? The poison is also used to formulate the cure. You understand? So, in this context, different species of monkeys have been used to counteract, as I say, this potential introduction, or it eventually did happen, of these Rh negative blood types in that context. Yep. So we can see here there's a fairly clear distinction between the origins of us as a people, and as you know, the reason why they sent a being that is part combination, or certainly from as an anarchy perspective, and part combination of the Natharu, is because Inky intercepted our genes, or the Sans people, in Africa. Do you understand? Inky himself was obviously a combination, isn't it, of the humanoid Anunnaki and had the reptilian genes as well. Do you understand? So a combination of those two in a similar, I suppose, vein like us, who are mammals and also reptiles in the same species in that context, overstood. So Inky mixed in with our genes. So we had the genes, obviously, of the Anunnaki and our true overseers, the Natharu, within inside us. So you need a combination, as I say, to teach or to deal with both natures. You understand? And a solution that dealt with both natures. Also, you understand how we had to walk the way we walk on a short path, a long path. Short walk, on a long path, meaning a lot of information had to be conveyed to us in a short space of time. Do you understand? Any questions?
Yes, there is a question from Salket, and the question says, sorry, can you please explain the Rh negative blood types again? Can black folks have these blood types?
Yes, they can. And we're going to explain it. Go ABC. So spare us a second. We'll get there. There's a good question. Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah. So to show you the different types then. So as I say, from our point of view, so there's a very clear description, a clear delineation to who our ancestors are, what we look like physically, do you understand? And then our spiritual science that by nature we should be following, understand? And so here we see that originally we're much smaller in size. Yeah, human beings are much smaller in size. You see the males, they're 5'4", females 4'5". Obviously the characteristics, true hair, you understand? Darker skin tones, dark eyes as solar panels, you understand? The true hair, you understand? Curly, tight curls, stronger genes. Let's say this combination of the Enneads represents obviously us So represent 9 symbolic beings, you understand? Represent, obviously, when we came out of the waters, so the Ogdoads represents us in the waters, you understand? 4 sets of genetic shifts that took place while we were in the waters of this planet. And then when we emerged onto land, we refer to as the 9 or the Enneads, yes? And then you really look at how we are formulated as human beings, those principles are still in there. So he's got the sperm, you cut the tail in half and you look at it with an electron microscope, it's got 9 centrioles. You understand? So we talked about 9 energies or 9 forces or 9 principles that gave birth to us. Do you understand? So these Enneads, represent these principles. You understand? So us in the waters, us on land. You understand? The Negroid race. You understand? And then herbivorous in nature. You understand? Even though probably now, okay, and now the genes have shifted, haven't they? So some people on this call who were born after the year 1970, not saying you can't have those before, but generally speaking, if you run your tongue on the upper part of your on the bottom part of your upper teeth, in your mouth, for example, you'll see that maybe your teeth are not smooth going all the way across, that you've got a couple of fangs in there. Do you understand? Yeah, incisors, where you got a couple of fangs. I'm doing it, that's why my voice is changing along with you. But you can see that you've got a couple of fangs, and those are more generations are created out of that. You understand? Because we become more meaty, as we become much more carnivorous over our original nature. Then we've developed fangs. Understand? More so a trait that we got from our, our Caucasian counterparts. Yeah, so this is some of the shifts or the changes that have started to take place in us, and why we're inheriting, as I say, as was touched upon as we just read, inheriting a lot of their diseases. Understand? Because we're regressing. Understand? Becoming more like them. In the absence of, for at least Wu-Sabat, come across a true alternative direction or ascension pathway to follow. So our religions, animism, Wu-Sabat, you understand, Sabianism, all the same thing, dealing with the science of Nupu as opposed to Zupu. And you see here on the right hand side, the Kama'u, the Pleiadians, you understand, and then the Tananu, so the reptilian side of the Anunnaki, on that side, and the fallen ones, the Gibborim, this is their origin. Do you understand? The 200 fallen angels, which they meet. Remember, they don't progress. They don't have a soul. They don't progress up the spiritual or esoteric ladder on the point of death, because they don't have a soul, which is a mechanism you need to travel interdimensionally in this context, or to ascend, for lack of a better word. And so they're trapped, you understand, below 6 ether, between 1 and 6 ether ranges, and they are tormented by these 200 angels, whose punishment, you understand, for interfering with their project, so the Anunnaki project of their sort of Adam and Eve. Do you understand? So the ones that they're discussing in their Bible, remember, are the 16th, I think, generation of that project of them trying to breed in these Adamites into the planet Earth to mine gold for them. You understand? So, but they mixed in with these women and created these Gibborim. You understand? Half sort of Anunnaki, like a better word, or half Anakim, half human being, who basically ran rampant on the planet because a combination of regimes led to a madness. Do you understand? So eating human flesh, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Do you understand? So a wild ass, serious, problematic people for this. So they violated their own rules, and as a result, they were trapped here, and their physical structure was their physical body, so their ability to incarnate was removed. You understand? And trapped here as spiritual beings. That was their punishment for them. So locked into here and torment Caucasians when they transition. You understand? Out of the physical. So we can see here fur, transparent skin, transparent eyes, and notice obviously a lot taller in height than the Nagaru. Do you understand? So again, much more gorilla or ape-like characteristics. Do you understand? Where their genes were, who their genes were mixed in with. Do you understand? To formulate their origins. 8'5", so pretty tall. 7'5" for females. You understand? So when we see some of the traits of things on the planet, we can see that. Well, if we're taller than 5'4" and 4'5", maybe the attraction, let's say, to I want a guy who's not me personally, pause, but women may be attracted to guys. I want a sick man who's 6 foot, understand this, that, etc., etc. Well, it's more on the Nephilim Gibborim end, the Anunnaki end, than it is on the, do you understand? The Natharu end of what we're doing. So I think the planet Earth is women. Something like Partarak goes into that in some detail. So carnivorous in nature, and then we see the religions that have been created, the fake. Also, really important, I suppose, the old school books like Millennium Part 1 and 2, I suppose, really go into detail around the link of monotheistic religions and that they're watered down versions really of Druidism, do you understand, or Wiccanism, do you understand, which is the religion of the Celtics, understood. So this is masked today by the watered down application of these more barbaric, let's say, religions, and so it's hidden. So they're showing the world one thing, and then behind closed doors, doing something completely different, do you understand, but still justified by them as their culture and practices, as I say, as some degree given by their overlords, extraterrestrial ancestors. So Zupu, you understand, to fair skin, yellow fur, yellow eyes, ruddy skin hue. So Zupu is the counterpart to Nupu, the spiritual science. So Zupu is its counterpart. 9 versus the 6. So again, you can see here showing the influence of the Rh positive blood types coming from the talus monkey, you understand, which you describe Hotep chapter 1 in some detail, versus the tailed monkey, you understand, and the differences between the natures of these two. In fact, the baboon, as you can see, is not a naturally occurring creature, but more of a hybrid, you understand, because it's part simian, part canine, do you understand? The baboon in nature, in that regard, let's say mandrill, and the different star systems, as I say, which those origins are from, you understand? And what's quite interesting is that obviously if we look at the Giza pyramid, for example, and now we look at the different chambers, for example. So you've got the king's chamber, you've got the queen's chamber. So king's points to Orion, queen's points to Sirius. Then you've got a chamber, if you look at it from a side profile on the other side, and where is that pointing to? That's pointing to the Draco star system. Do you understand? So so our story, or the origins of our story, in a sense, is played out in these monuments. This is where you can kind of see ours is factual, theirs is myth, because their stories only are backed up by what they've written down, or what somebody has written down in books saying what was said. You understand? So from a third party point of view, I'm writing down that God said or God did this. Do you understand? Not that I did this or I witnessed this. They're speaking about it from let's just say, from somebody writing a story. But when you look in our symbolism, it alludes to real events or things that have taken place. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, there's a reason why it points to that, but you're going to have to figure that out. Do you understand? That's some of the inner standing that if you apply yourself, you can get that detail. Now, So normal natured, natural natured, Sands people, yeah, the Wathabi, and then you've got Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal. You understand? So these are some of the names now, and then obviously you've got American Indian. So they call it American Indians, you understand? Not the original Anasazi, us who walked over to the Americas, for example. You've got the the combination of Asians, well, they are Asians, excuse me, but you've got a combination of the Chinese, do you understand? Then mixed with some Nagaru genes, and then eventually Dravidian genes, understand? But these are of Denisovan origin and Homo afarensis, do you understand? So we've got different people on the planet arising from different genetic configurations, you understand? So they started their book by saying, in the beginning, God, you understand, created, etc., and then go down to verse 26 of the first chapter to 28 and talk about the being created in the image and after their likeness. Well, so somebody on the planet is in the image and after likeness of God. Not all people. Yeah, somebody on the planet or some race of people on the planet is in the image and after likeness of that God. But that God was not at the very beginning of things, and they don't claim that. That's what others claim on their behalf. But the book says in the beginning, it doesn't say at the very beginning of things. In this period of the beginning, this happened. Do you understand? So the planet was already there, solar system was already there. Do you understand? Universe was already here. Universes were already here. Multiverses were here. The omniverse was already here. Understood? So in that period of beginning, that's where their story started. It wasn't the very origin of things. They don't even claim that themselves. You understand? And even moved to say certain parts of the Bible, misordered it so that people wouldn't figure it out. You understand? So people don't most know that Jeremiah, certain chapters in Jeremiah chapter 4 should be before Genesis chapter 1. Excuse me. In terms of the origin of that story. Again, unproven stories. So what it's showing you is that the different races are arising out of different extraterrestrials doing different projects on the planet Earth with different blood types, different chromosome configurations, do you understand? Which has led to differences of races and sub-races here on the planet Earth, or planetary nation, if we want to use the updated terminology, do you understand? In this day and time. But we were here first, you understand? So this is why protection was needed for our genes, because in order to create a gene or establish a genealogy here, you would want to use the established genes of the original people who grew with the planet, understand, and was seeded here by the Natharu, do you understand? Because everything would be in proper alignment with natural nature. Our ancestors being the highest, or having the highest technological capabilities of all around, do you understand? Oops. Any questions?
No questions.
All right, so let's get into the different blood types. I mean, I think we've shown this video before, but useful to go over for everybody if they don't understand. And then we get into the RH blood, RH positive and negative as well, explanations. So yeah, take time, watch this.
Hello and welcome to the Penguin Prof channel. Today's episode is going to be about understanding blood types, the ABO and RH groups. There are so many misconceptions about blood typing. Oh my gosh, you can eat based on your blood type. You can, check this out, you can find your perfect match based on your blood type. It's really pretty ridiculous, but you know, a lot of people are confused because historically people had to have blood tests before marriage. In truth, this really didn't have that much to do with blood types as much as it had to do with disease, especially diseases like syphilis. But it accounts for a lot of the confusion that goes on about blood groups, and there are many blood groups. Certainly the most important and the focus of this video, the ABO blood group and the RH group. Interestingly enough, we share the ABO and RH blood groups with our relatives, apes, chimpanzees, bonobos, and gorillas. Okay, so students are totally plagued by these donor-recipient tables, and they think that they have to memorize all this. For heaven's sakes, don't do that. That's what the Penguin Prof is for. Okay, we're going to go through what all of this stuff means so that it makes sense to you, and then you don't have to memorize anything. One quick request, if you can, please donate and give the gift of life. One blood donation can save several people. Just a tiny bit of history here. These blood groups were discovered in around 1900 by Carl Landsteiner. He wondered why some people were saved as a result of blood transfusion, but some patients died. And boy, that's, I think, a really good question. He received the Nobel Prize for this work in 1930. Blood types are inherited genetic traits, so they're just like all the other things that we inherit, which does, again, make me think about this date by type thing. What if I can come up with a match by earlobe type? I mean, that makes about as much sense. Anyway, the thing that's confusing is that blood typing, the ABO system, is not inherited in Mendelian fashion. So it gets a little bit complicated because we have 3 alleles, and don't worry, we're going to go through that. I'm going to have an analogy here. Red blood cells look a little bit like donuts. Of course, they don't have the hole in the middle. They have a little depression. But my ABO analogy, we're going to look at donuts and sprinkles, okay? And hopefully we'll make some sense of this. Now, some people have donuts that have on their surface little sprinkles that look like A's. Okay, just go with me on this. We're going to call those people type A. Some people have donuts that have sprinkles on them that are little B's, and we're going to call those people type B. Some people have donuts and they're kind of greedy. They like it all, so they have both A and B sprinkles on top. We're going to call those people AB. And some people don't have any sprinkles at all. They are sprinkle challenged. They are the plain donuts. We call those people type O. That causes some confusion because some people think that there are O sprinkles, okay, but there aren't. Oh, by the way, different parts of the world, you may actually see this as type 0, which actually makes more sense. Okay, no extra sprinkles. These are the ABO phenotypes. These are the traits that individuals can express. So what this analogy means is that, of course, the donuts are the blood cells and the sprinkles are antigens. Antigens on the cell surface, and we designate the different antigens as either A or B. So the A people have A antigens on the surface of their cells. The B people have B antigens on the surface of their cells. The A and B people, of course, have both, and the plain donuts have neither A nor B. But what do the antigens really look like? Your textbooks in general biology and introductory physiology probably don't show you, but this is the Penguin Prof channel, so you're going to get a little bit more out of me. This is the idea. I'm showing you only the carbohydrate portion of the antigen, so there's another section that kind of anchors the thing into the cell membrane. The plain donut has a sequence that looks like this. That's the base unit. For people with A sprinkles, A antigens, at the end of the base, you add one more unit. It's called N-acetylgalactosamine, and that's what it really looks like. People with B sprinkles, the B antigen, instead of adding that, you add a galactose, which looks like this. Now, when you look at these, you'll notice that they're very similar in structure. This is an acetamino group, and this is a hydroxyl group. Even though they look similar, though, chemically they are very different. They have different properties. This group is a hydrogen bond acceptor, while the hydroxyl group is a hydrogen bond donor. So the point is that they do have different chemical properties, even though they do look rather similar. Okay, so the alleles in the ABO system, they're encoded here at the long arm on chromosome 9. And this, again, is not an example of Mendelian inheritance. So it might be a little confusing. There's actually 3 alleles that we worry about. But don't worry, we're going to go through it all. We're going to use a lowercase I to code for the base, the plain donut, okay? We're going to use a capital I with a superscript A for the A antigen. So that's the plain donut, and then add the N-acetylgalactosamine. And then finally, the third allele we have is the B antigen. So we're going to take that base unit, the plain donut, and we're going to add galactose. Those are the 3 alleles we have. So when you combine the 3 alleles, we're going to make all 4 blood group phenotypes. I know you want to see how this works. So 4 different possibilities. I'm reminding you again what this looks like. We're talking about A people. They have the A sprinkles. There are two ways that someone could inherit the A phenotype or the A blood group. You can be homozygous for A, and this means that both parents gave you this allele. So you inherited two copies of the information to make the A sprinkles. But you could also inherit only one copy. So one parent gave you the information to make A sprinkles. The other parent just gave you the plain donut information. Either way, if you're homozygous or heterozygous, you're going to be blood type A. Same thing is true for people who are blood type B. There are two ways to be B. You can be homozygous for B because both parents gave you the information to make B sprinkles, or you can be heterozygous for B. Only one parent gave you the information. If your blood type is AB, there's only one genotype that is possible. One parent had to give the information to make A antigens, A sprinkles, and the other parent had to give information to make B sprinkles. This, by the way, is a great example of why the ABO inheritance is an example of codominance, why it's non-Mendelian, because A isn't dominant over B or vice versa. So that's a really cool thing to notice. If you are blood type O, there's only one genotype that encodes the plain donuts. You had to get two copies of that little I. And that's how you inherit the 4 blood groups. Now, one more thing we need to understand before we talk about transfusions and who's allowed to donate to whom, and that has to do with antibodies. So we've been talking about A and B antigens. These are particles on the cell surface, and you have tons of them, okay? Not just the A or B. The body is full of antigens. They help cells to identify each other, and many antigens are what we call self-antigens. They identify you as you. The problem comes if you are exposed to foreign antigens, strangers. If you're exposed to antigens that are not native to you, your body is designed to make antibodies against them. So you make antibodies against foreign antigens. That's the key. If you've never seen antibodies before, this is what they look like. There's this hypervariable region. This is the part here, as you can see, that binds with the antigen. It's very much like how a key fits a lock. The idea is that if you are exposed to antigens that are foreign to you, you'll make antibodies against them. If antigens and antibodies come together, you get a reaction called agglutination. And this is what normal blood should look like on a microscope slide. You notice it looks very, very nice, and all the cells are evenly spread out. But in agglutination, the particles clump together. And that nice fluid liquid blood can become more like a solid and form clots. And this is bad. And this is why understanding blood types is essential when you're talking about transfusions and why this table exists. But now we get to the point where you don't have to memorize this anymore. All you have to understand is that no foreign antigens are allowed. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all 4 blood types, we're going to mix them with the other blood types, and we're going to understand what happens and why some mixes are allowed and some are not. So for a person who has antigen A, the B antigen is foreign, and they have antibodies against the B antigen. So we're going to mix this blood with blood type A, and of course there's no problem, right? That's their blood type. But if that A person gets transfused with a blood sample that contains B antigens, you got a problem, because that B antigen will combine with the anti-B antibodies and the blood clump. So that is not allowed. If you transfuse with AB blood, that's also a problem. The A is okay, but remember, they have B too. So that B is bad and causes the blood to clump. Now, why can you transfuse an A person with O blood? The answer hopefully makes sense to you now. This O is the plain donut. It doesn't have any antigens, so you don't make antibodies against it. So O blood is okay, perfectly fine. What about B blood? Now, the person that has B antigens is sensitive to and makes antibodies against A antigens. So if you have a B patient and you transfuse A blood, not good. You're going to get clumping. A B person with B blood obviously is okay. That's their blood type. AB is not okay because that A is foreign. And O blood is fine. That's just a plain donut. What about AB? The AB person has antigens A and B, and so they don't make antibodies against either. So AB blood can be transfused with all 4 blood types because they got it all. What about O? O individuals have antibodies against the A antigen because those are foreign, and the B antigen because those are foreign too. So you can't give an O person A blood, and you can't give an O person B blood or AB blood. Oh my gosh, that's a double whammy. You can only give O blood to an O person. So all that you have to remember is that you can't give foreign antigens to someone. And it should make sense now that the type AB is the universal recipient, because you can't give them anything that they don't already have. And type O is the universal donor, because they are the plain donuts and they don't excite anybody's immune system. Okay, all we got left is the Rh antigen, sometimes called the D antigen. This one's going to be really easy because it's inherited in Mendelian fashion. And by the way, named for the rhesus macaque, in which a lot of early studies were done. The Rh antigen is inherited in Mendelian fashion. You'll be excited to know that. If you're not excited, I have a video on Mendelian genetics, fun with cats and peas. So if I run through this a little bit fast and you're confused with the vocabulary, check that out. I'll put the link in the description bar below. We're going to look at the different options. There are only 3, as is typical for Mendelian genetics. Individuals who are homozygous dominant, capital R, they express the Rh antigen on their red blood cells. Individuals who are heterozygous, right, that dominant one will mask the recessive one. Those individuals are also Rh positive. The only way to not express the Rh antigen is to be homozygous recessive. These are the different possibilities, and I just wrote them out so you can see that only individuals who are homozygous recessive will not express the Rh antigen on their blood cells. Everybody else will. Now, the medical importance of this is shown here. If you have an Rh negative woman and an Rh positive man and they conceive a child. Oh, look, she's so cute. She's all like cuddly up against him. He's so positive. Anyway, so I made them both homozygous for their respective Rh types. So she's homozygous recessive. He's homozygous dominant. Their fetus will be heterozygous. So now look at what's happening. You have an Rh negative woman carrying an Rh positive fetus. Now, antibodies flow in one direction from the mother's body across the placenta to the fetus. So it seems a little strange that the Rh antigen being expressed on the fetal red blood cells is not, in a sense, seen by the mother's body. So usually that doesn't occur until the last trimester, or usually birth, where there is hemorrhaging and the mixing of blood. And at that point, the mother's body sees the Rh antigen for the first time. And you know what happens when you get a foreign antigen? You make antibodies against it. So from here on out, the mother will make antibodies against the Rh antigen for the rest of her life. She is what we call sensitized. Now, up to this point, there's actually no problem. The problem comes in subsequent pregnancies. If this Rh negative woman conceives another Rh positive child, now the situation is different because she is sensitized against Rh, and the antibodies that she makes will flow across the placenta to the fetus and will cause what is called rhesus disease or hemolytic disease of the newborn. And that can be catastrophic. Now, there's good news. The percent of individuals on the planet who are Rh negative is relatively small. These are data from the US, but it's similar around the world. There's even more good news, though. There is a treatment called RhoGAM. You can see here when it is administered, and this will actually bind up and block the mother's antibodies and prevent them from binding to the blood cells of the fetus. So that's really good news. A lot of information. As always, I hope that was helpful. Thank you so much for visiting the Penguin Prof channel. As always, I ask for your support. Please click those buttons, like, share, and subscribe. Join me on Facebook, follow on Twitter. Good luck.
Right, so useful video there. Check that out on YouTube if you want to re-look or check this class out when it comes back out on YouTube. So useful, check there to see, as I say, what takes place in that regard, all the different blood types. So it's interesting that when you look at the Nagaru as the many Nagaru maybe are O blood type in that regard, but you can understand why, because obviously being the first people on the planet here and naturally occurring people on the planet, by way of our design, it wasn't necessary obviously to have protections against blood types arising from foreign invaders. Do you understand? So obviously we were here for many millions into hundreds of thousands of years, overstood without any having to concern ourselves, remember, with foreign genes. So foreign genes or 64 forces, remember, came in around about 17, just under 18 million years ago to this planet and brought forces of decay and death, etc., to this planet for many different life forms. You understand? So as different races come along, then it's obviously necessary to protect against that. So we can see here that, as I say, from the page out of the Proverbs of Yaanuwn, that obviously Rh negative Rh negative blood types, of course, you understand, have a destructive effect, or can have a destructive effect, on Rh positive human beings. You understand? And so obviously Rogan was developed more latterly, do you understand, to enable the propagation of, you understand, all types of races if they mix in with Caucasian women, let's say, for example, who have that blood type originally. Now, why do we say Caucasian? Because obviously that diagram would have shown that Rh negative exists in all races, but obviously it's come around through race mixing in different ways across the planet. Why is it relevant today? Well, you're not really Caucasian, you understand, this is important, or you're not the Leben Salaus, you're not the white race if you are not Rh negative. So when we talk about somebody being the white race, when we talk about the white race, or according to their Bible, that they're in the telomerase, they were given a set period of which to live by, do you understand, and that their time has run out. This is because, and then obviously COVID or Kabad 19, as the master referred to it as, and what its real purpose was as part of 24 viruses that they've released into the planet, do you understand, over the last sort of 6,000 or so years, was designed to take out obviously those Rh negative blood types. Understand? So you're not white if you're not Caucasian, and you're not Rh negative. So if you're Rh positive and you're Caucasian, you're not Caucasian. Understand? In terms of look wise. So that's the definition. Important to understand and to overstand that. So so you can see here that, as I say, from an Rh positive point of view, or the Rh positive antigen, remember, is designed to protect against, you understand? To protect against, or at least provide formulation to protect against Rh negative. So this is dealing with long-standing extraterrestrial wars that have taken place, and there's two parteracts in particular. It's just gone out my head, which is nice, isn't it? Excuse me, I Was There, which was here, part 1 and 2. Do you understand? So check out those parteracts, which gives obviously there's been many different types of events that have taken place, but those hone in, you understand, on a particular war that was designed, a war that took place, which was designed, say, with the Parnathara, I suppose, working with, or Imhotep of ancient Egypt, I suppose, working with Inki to take out, Ptah, of ancient Egypt, working with Inki of the Anunnaki to take out, as I say, certain poison the food, let's say, of the certain groups of Anunnaki, the humanoid, the reptilian versions, the disagreeable humanoid versions, who obviously had a taste for human flesh. Do you understand? So that goes into that, and certain wars obviously that took place. So the introduction of the Rh negative blood type, remember, is as a consequence of them being in the image and after, or the using of the genes of the Pleiadians who are Rh negative. You understand? And her were the original food type for those reptilian Anunnaki. Do you understand? The Tananu, you understand, who had a taste for human flesh, and so they sought to create a being in their image and after their likeness as the replacement food source. Do you understand? So, and this is why I say when you look at the Levitical priesthood and their attire, do you understand, the headdress that they wear, it looks like a chef's hat. You understand? And so that's the origin. They don't want people to say that obviously they were created to be a food source for these Tananu, do you understand? Anunnaki Tananu, so they're referred to as. And obviously, Inki, with the help from us as the ancient Egyptians, were assisted in trying to, say, manipulate the mitochondrial DNA within them to trigger, as I say, a weapon that would make the food diseased, and it caused, as I say, a situation where they killed off a number of these Tananu who were using, as I say, with the help, in fact, of the Pleiadians, who wanted to be rid of their overlords. Do you understand? So they worked with the Anunnaki, the agreeable Anunnaki, and us as the ancient Egyptians to take out, as I say, this group of Tananu who had a taste and still have a taste for human flesh, which is Enlil's side of the family, so to speak. Do you understand? The combination of the humanoids and the reptilians. Do you understand? So, in that regard, so they developed a weapon. Do you understand? And this is why, when the master is saying, "Oh, he is a disease," well, it's because when you go back to their origin, they were created to be a weapon. Understood? To take out, as I say, these flesh-eating groups of extraterrestrials. They're basically raiding the planet, causing havoc, you understand, leaving dead bodies and things all over the place, causing diseases. Much chaos, understood, did they create. So, you know, the Natharu, had to intervene and develop a methodology, not to take them out, but then left certain characteristics or traits that if then people on this planet chose to follow those traits, you understand, then they would also be taken out as well. Gluttony, over sex, do you understand? Certain things that, as I say, are considered to be, I don't know, maybe fun, or the excesses of being a human being were designed in that way. So if people took on those characteristics of these Makasu, eventually it would take them out, you understand? And result in death, or a death pathway in that regard. So we've got the split between the tailless and the tailed, leading to our Rh positive and Rh negative blood types. And the Kabir Kadam, so these Bigfoot, 3 different species sent here from Sabatu, you understand? So the Sirius star constellation, which led to, as I say, these 3 different types of Celtics, 3 species, different species of Celtics being born. Do you understand? Now, Kabir Kadam, you understand, Bigfoot, as you see on the screen, up to 3 feet tall. Do you understand? And then we've got 3 types. So dark brown fur, red fur, and then white fur in terms of species type. Understand? And so when you look at the etymology of the words here, so simian, some people are called simian, not realizing, or some people name their children simian, not realizing it means ape. You understand? See monkey from the Spanish and French word mona, meaning ape. And then key of monkey is ki or kin. But if you remember, when you look at the word Anunnaki, for example, what do you get? Well, it means those who were sent from Anu in 50s. So ki is, which is excuse me, they refer to it as cuneiform, but cuneiform just is a Greek way to describe describe that language. Do you understand? But remember, key of Anunnaki means earth, understood, and that key in Greek became G or geo. You understand? Relating to earth, geography, geometrics, etc., etc. Pertain to the planet, as they give the name for it. You understand? So that monkey means earth ape. You understand? So in that regard, as opposed to, yes, we've got extraterrestrial, apes in terms of Kabir Kadam. You understand? These Bigfoots. Yeah. So a monkey is retaining to one of its meanings really is the earth ape, or earth relating to ape. Relating to earth. So as we can see, there. So leading then into 3 different types of the Caucasian race, do you understand? So white fur and white eyes, and classify them as albinos, but this is a much closer. If you look at, I think it's a film, Prometheus is the movie, isn't it, where you see that type of look. There was another series with the name can't. It's on Sci-Fi Channel. I have to look it up. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but basically that I think it began with R, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. If someone can remember in the chat, I'll give them more details here. But it basically showed these different races, and they were in this particular series. Their planet had been destroyed or whatever, and they crashed down to Earth. And you had the hierarchy of these different races. So the Pleiadians are shown on there. You've got blacks on there, who were the kind of top of the hierarchy in this particular film, but they ate the Pleiadians, you understand, for food, you understand, also mixed in with them, all kind of nonsense, whatever. So you've got these different classifications of human beings. They've got mechanoids, understand, human robot hybrids, all kind of different things in this program. But they had about 3 seasons on it, but it's quite interesting because it showed this different hierarchy, you understand, and particularly showed the Pleiadians there as subservient to, they don't always show blacks in these movies, as you know, it's being the top of the kind of line. But in this one, they showed, the blacks were the head of this, as I say, this group of extraterrestrials that crashed down to, I think it was Earth, you understand, in these massive craft ships, you understand. So if I remember the name, I'll post it in the chat or something. But I think it began with R, but it's on Sci-Fi Channel a few years ago. Had about 3 seasons for it. Now, suffice to say, this is closer to the Pleiadian look, you understand. And then we've got white fur, white eyes, white skin. We've got blonde hair, blue eyes, which obviously the world's obsessed with, it seems. Yeah, and then red or ruddy skin. Do you understand? So it's all about Adam. Yeah, Adam. That means red or ruddy. Yes, yeah, so when a Caucasian person slaps their face or whatever, and you get that blushing of the cheeks or whatever, that's talking about that red and ruddy skin. So we were not the Adam. That was not us. And as you say, sometimes in the older books, the reason why it's shown because we're taking through a certain story. That original Adam, which is the same as the project member of Homo erectus to genus Homo to Homo erectus, do you understand? And then Homo erectus to Homo sapien, which is the face on Mars that referred to the Adama project. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, and there were 16. See, Holy Tablets chapter 5. If you're minded to read that, it talks about 16 generations of Adam before they got to Zakar on the cable. Do you understand? Who were effectively Dravidians. Understood? So, nonetheless, we get these 3 root races: yellow fur, blue skin, and then red fur and green eyes. Do you understand? So, it's interesting. The Masters talked about, again, you can tell who's ruling certain times. Obviously, the Irish or the Americans was who they sort of push as some of their lead actresses. Do you understand? And so this is considered, I suppose, more of an Irish look, one might say, and this is maybe considered to be more of an Americanized, do you understand, look in that side. So the two out of the sort of six kind of kins or kin red, you understand, or red kinds, the Irish and the Polish have been most troublesome according to the actual fact the Celtics over the last 6,000 years. And interesting enough, I don't know if it's the same in America, but in England, a lot of the interracial mixing that has taken place is between blacks and Irish. You understand? So a lot of the mixed race generations from way back are between Irish and blacks, because Irish, you understand, and blacks were seemingly discriminated against by other Caucasians, you understand, in terms of racism, as well as Jews and some other groups overstood, and seemingly Irish and blacks, got together and produced a lot of mixed race children, even till to today. So, saying they say, according to their movies, I think it's in The Godfather, you keep your enemies close. You keep your friends close, I think, and your enemies close. I think it's The Godfather films, isn't it? It's just a statement made by somebody in real life. It's a fictional statement. Do you understand? But it's interesting that keeping your friends close and your enemies closer. Well, actually, what closer way can I get to you than being in your genes and causing mischief, etc., and trouble, and you don't even know I'm even in there? Do you understand? So, in that regard, so important here. So, COVID-19, COVID, etc., is designed to get rid of, or it's designed to get rid of hybrid races. It's one of 24 viruses to be released in the last 6,000 years. And so remember, when the advice was given about whether one should or should not take the vaccine, it was based on your interaction, do you understand, with potentially these hybrids in that regard. So if you were continually in interaction with them, then it was advisable for you to take a particular vaccine. Not all of them, only the Moderna, you understand, because that's what the Caucasians designed to protect themselves. Do you understand? Johnson & Johnson, history of killing blacks with not just that, but different products that they've produced, do you understand, over the years, found to be problematic long term. There's various different lawsuits, whether it's talcum powder and other different things that are now ongoing. So maybe some of them concluded about the adverse effects of some of these products, which some are targeted and marketed specifically to certain races more than others. And so you can, as they depicted, I think in that movie, they cloned Tyrone. Do you understand? Very interesting movie to watch. So the fact is that what we're seeing here is that there was specific stuff targeted at hybrids to take the hybrids out. And so this is why it's important that you're not the white race if you don't have an Rh negative blood type. So that is what they're seeking to eliminate, you understand? And that's their own, various groups of extraterrestrials. The ones involved in COVID-19 are from Arcturus, you understand? So introducing that into the world. So some people, as I say, the genes are scrambled and mixed. Some of you on this call, whether myself, whatever the case may be, have some Caucasian in you. Do you understand? Because of mixing, etc., that has taken place. Do you understand? And so certain diseases are targeted to take out this Rh negative blood type, which is obviously was designed to interfere with the propagation of life here on the planet. Do you understand? Any questions?
No questions.
Yeah, so the Rh negative gene type was obviously spread through the planet by way of the Vikings, you understand? And I think we've shown this before. This is out of Existence How and Why, I think, if memory serves me correctly. Yeah. So they descended really out of the Caucasus Mountains, these Vikings, you understand? So the Norsemen, or are really the project that took place. I think we show the extraterrestrial map. We might show a bit later. So the Norse project is a project, obviously, instigated by the Pleiadians, you understand? And so this spread of these weaker genes was really initiated by them, sent out really, I suppose, to mix in with other races, because the Pleiadians had weaker genes that wouldn't worked on their own planet, but not this one. So they needed to mix in with other races in order to strengthen their genes. Understood? So again, so the Caucasians, obviously, as we see here, these flugel rods, so probably one of the older or oldest Caucasian races. And saying, so they migrated out of the Caucasus Mountains from those Nordic lands, and so basically, where we see countries where they occupied those lands, the word land appears in those countries. Do you understand? And so this is the names, obviously, as they were known, Germanic tribes. They were called Visigoths, Ostrogoths, Vandals, Burgundians, Lombards, and the Franks. Understand? So a lot of the names, when you look up, this is one of the books that the master teacher wrote many years ago called Let's Set the Record Straight, was obviously getting you into the mindset of looking up these country names, for example, and seeing that they didn't really have an origin that linked to describing the people. So if you think about, I don't know, Nigeria, for example, the name Nigeria has got the word nigger in there. Do you understand? So it's describing, you understand, a land of niggers, excuse my French, you understand? But yeah, of black people, yeah, from a Latin word negra, you understand, to mean black. So it's describing, whether it's the right word to use, but it's describing the people, you understand, or the colour of the people. Whereas their names don't tell you who they are, so they're hiding, obviously, the bloodline in that regard. So land is talking about, obviously, out of the Caucasus Mountains, and they, without any mixing, I suppose, occupied these lands. Yeah, so it's a kinsman. That's an ancient map here for the 6 Germanic kingdoms. Interesting number, yeah. So when we get the term Ea now, excuse me, Stan, excuse me, not Ea, Stan, we see that those Caucasians who were occupying these areas of land without any mixing now have gone into Russia, you understand, and on into sort of India, and mixing in with the Dravidu. So these are black people, i.e. black as in dark-skinned, with straight fur, you understand? So so a Caucasian and a Dravidian mix became known as the Tans. Understood? So then we have Pakistan, Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, yeah, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Bhutan. You understand? So these are the true Aryans. So somebody, now I think today they refer to them in England as South Asians, but so really, somebody who's from Pakistan, for example, is a sub-race of Caucasian and Dravidians. Do you understand? Or people call them Indians today. So they are in fact a sub-race. Yeah. So between those two combinations, understood? So that's the real true. So Indo-Europeans or Aryans, excuse me, which is obviously tying into Easterners because of the link to the Dravidians, understand, or Dravadu, known as the Tans. So in the country names is where the origins are. And then we've got the Ears. So so the Indo-Europeans, this new high sub-race, do you understand, then migrated out and then occupied their own areas, do you understand? And so this Indo-European or Aryans now, we've created the Persian era, Persian Empire, excuse me, and then set up in these countries where now that combination to the new hybrid would have an IA on the end. And so we can see here Gandaria, Afghanistan, ancient name, Harakania, in Sam, Pakistan, Sagartia, Parthia, Caspia, Media, interesting enough, or Media. See that name there, interesting. Yeah, it's used today. Iran, Assyria, Babylonia, Iraq, Mesopotamia, Syria, and Armenia. Understand? So Aya means state of or mindset, which was added to. So that was this new Indo-hybrid, which is Caucasian and Dravidian mix. Yeah. And to say the caves, obviously, Dirinkuyu. So these are some underground caves, obviously created by the Pleiadians. Let's say sort of underground caves was to separate out the diseased Caucasians, I suppose, from the clean ones. So the ones who had leprosy, there's this disease that was designed to sort of take them out. You understand? And then them overcoming that and becoming clean lepers, all of that took place. So they tried to protect, or sought to protect, the clean lepers from this war that took place. Designed to supposed to take them out. They set up these underground caverns, well, not more than caverns, they're literal cities underground, caves, to protect the clean lepers. So they wasn't concerned really about the diseased ones. They wanted those to die off. But the ones who were clean, so you understand, fully, I suppose, white, and without these sores and those things on the skin, whatever were considered to be clean lepers. So that the separation of the sheep in the Jacob story, this is what this is referring to, is touching upon those real life incidents, as well as the Yaqub grafted devil story. Obviously, it's talking about the original. The original. The original Flugeroids projects. You understand, which obviously led to the Norsemen. The Flugeroids. You understand, one of the sub races below the planet Earth. You understand? Any questions?
No questions.
Okay. So obviously one in the chat. No, it's not all from the Bigfoot. So Bigfoot has got part of this information in. The movement of the races is in. It's either an existence how and why actual fact, or 18 plus 18 plus 1, the 37 genes of mitochondrial DNA. Do you understand? So those are the three source books of reference in there. Yep. Again, you can see we're just putting back up this extraterrestrial map, so you can maybe get a clearer picture of, say, different groups of extraterrestrials responsible for different sub-races on the planet Earth, which is why you have all these, as I say, different blood types, and arguably different agendas, maybe for lack of a better word, in terms of what reason that they're producing different races here on the planet. Some in alignment with the Riskians or the Natharu and their approach, and so would then be classified as natural, versus some that were not with the permission or in line with the protocols set in place by the Riskians and the Natharu, and therefore considered unnatural, as well as unauthorized. Do you understand? So you've got different projects taking place around the world, which is why I say sometimes for some it can be confusing. Do you understand? So here in the project here with so we've got out of the Celtics, we've got, let's say, this kind of Nordic pathway, Celtics obviously relating to Germany, and then Celtics obviously here more European, as it's classified as. Do you understand? And so we've got different groups of projects taking place, but in that case, all of them, in this instance, I suppose, all of them using are tied in to the the Bigfoots that were sent here, and obviously some of their genes utilized then in combination with human beings already here in origin utilizing certain projects here by kidnapping individuals from other projects and utilizing them because they haven't been here for millions of years, for example, into billions of years, where we've evolved, isn't it, from single cell amoebas into this complex humanoid life form. So some have come here and cheated, you understand, and taken other people's projects, overstood, and then utilized it to try and formulate their own humanoid being or kind of man in this case, here on the planet Earth. Understood. Yeah. So again, so when we talk about, importantly, I suppose, when we talk about out of Africa, you've got Pan-Africanists who talk about obviously related to cold weather, which is just complete nonsense. Do you understand? So this is the migration we're talking about out of Africa. And along the way, you've got interventions by certain groups of extraterrestrials, some even in certain instances lifting human beings over and setting up bases in different parts of the planet. So this is how we've arrived there. Do you understand? Or how different human beings, have arrived in certain locations because they've been kidnapped and then lifted, you understand, and deposited in certain locations, and then bases set up, and they've developed, say, human beings out of these locations, you understand, as opposed to even in this instance where we used to go, for example, walk from Africa to the Americas before the land masses were separated. And so we used to walk over there to go there on holiday. Understand? So, which is different to being lifted, whereas some of these Caucasians, etc., have been lifted and shifted over to these locations, or stolen and lifted to then formulate a project or a plan to produce them. So, out of Africa to us, when we're talking about it, it's talking about interceptions of genes, and then we're monitoring, obviously, the spreading of certain blood types. Particularly, as I say, these negative blood types that have progressed around the world. So, just in terms of, I think it's out of Proverbs of Yaanuwn. 400 to 350,000 years ago, we've moved from Africa, obviously, over to Arabia. You understand? So, this is in terms of the Rh positive blood types, obviously moving around the planet. 350,000 years ago, then we've seen from obviously over into Asia, do you understand? And only around about 40,000 years ago, have we seen it into the sort of European area in Scandinavia, and obviously then that's been developed. That project's then developed into, Rh negative blood types, and so being produced on the planet. Do you understand? Which now, obviously, they're seeking to eliminate or wipe out. Yeah, taking you back to just some original. So this is from Nation of Our Own Part 2, how the planet was originally set up into Nupu Zone and Zupu Zone, so the green or west zone versus the east, separated by a force field. So herbivores, humans, so dinosaurs were around at this time, so many millions of years ago. And so how the races were separated, and the nature of the races was separated onto the planet. And so we were, say, completely herbivorous at that time. Has obviously now changed. So these early kind of humanoid life, short, as I say, sort of, I suppose referred to as pygmies today, but these sort of humanids, the early kind of oldest human life we find here on the planet Earth, as opposed to Zupu, in a sense, Anunnaki influenced, obviously carnivores, omnivores, was a combination of the two, herbivorous and carnivorous, and then, as I say, humans, also dinosaurs on this time. So there's different races been around on this planet for a long time, do you understand? But obviously we were first. This force field obviously was broken down, and then you started to get, obviously, human beings and animals on parts of the planet maybe where they shouldn't have been, and there's obviously at a certain point, isn't it, the dinosaurs overran the humanids on the planet, and then a meteorite strike, it was recorded was a meteorite strike, but in fact was an extraterrestrial weapon designed, as say, to take out or wipe out the dinosaurs to restore the balance of food consumption on the planet, so that the dinosaurs were not overrunning as the great and terrible lizards, or the carnivorous dinosaurs were not overrunning the progression of humanoid life on the planet. So they took them out basically, using, as I say, what they call these great balls of fire. What time we got? Okay, all right, 16:45. Okay, I think it's a fair point to end. Just got a last little bit of this to do, so we'll do that on the next time, unless any questions. Heavy science in today, so just a little bit, final bit, I suppose, just in this class, just to deal with sort of the inside of people's genes and why there is non-compatibility between the races. And so we'll finish off on that section. It's quite an interesting section. But just on here, you can see that you think we're talking crazy with human beings being food and all that kind of stuff. Well, look, listen, all this stuff is in their books, in their language, and they're saying the word British, as you can see here, or in short, isn't it, is they call them Brits, yeah? So in short, they call them Brits, and that ties into the Hebrew word barith, in the saying, or covenant, in the saying. So here you see the word Brit there, yeah, tying into bara, the root word bara. It means for food or flesh, in the saying. So so angels' food, as they call it in their Bible, I think Psalm 73. So as I say, and then Brit. So they know which sounds covenant. So British, in the same word ish, means fire. It can mean man, you understand, and shah woman, but it also is the word ish for fire. In the sense of saying British, it's saying covenant of the children of fire, the Illuminati. You understand? So its origins is tying into this, saying illuminated groups or alumni, understood, who are set up to serve really these higher groups of extraterrestrials, which the Tananu, in the context of the food production, would be the ruling class, you understand, over the Illuminati in that regard. And as I say, obviously the son, Nana, who is their Jesus, or is Jesus and their Jesus, as their saviour. So on the sick side of that, or the ghostational side, their saviour is wanting people to be saved, to be used later for food. You understand? That is their rapture, tying into the word raptor, you understand, for these flesh eaters. So this is, they know this is their origin of their story, which they don't really want the world to know, understand, in that regard. Embarrassment, shame, and as you see in that book, Are There Black Devils? And says shame is the root of all insanity in the world today. And so the root, of all insanity in the world today. So, any questions? Yeah, any questions?
No questions.
No question.
Let me just check something just in relation to that question. 1 second. In the laboratory. Yeah, so that's correct. So 18 plus 18 plus 1, if you want to read more about or seek out your local Wise in Egypt store, 18 plus 18 plus 1 37 genes of the mitochondrial DNA, which we know about the movement or the changes in the, the TANs, basically land. So for the original Nordics, obviously the TANs, where there was a mixing between these kinsmen, the Nordics, and the Dravidians, which gave birth to the TANs. And then the resultant sub-race or hybrid of those two races resulted in the Ayers, or countries where they resided, were called Ayers. So all that's in 18 plus 18 plus 1. Bigfoot talking about the origin of the difference between Celtic, and Celtic. Understand? So that's on that side of things. So those 3 books. So in existence, I think how and why have been touched upon as well. And so those 3 books in particular touching into what we're speaking about today. And obviously this is from the proof that we're looking at here, which we'll go into and finalise, I think, at least this section of it in this class. So if there are no questions, then next class, I think, is mid-September. Mid-September the 17th is the next one. So this class, of course, today will be on our YouTube channel, hopefully later this week. So next one on the 17th. Check out, obviously, the YouTube channel. Again, for those more interested in finding out who we are, then United Sabians Worldwide, a lot of resources on there, and you can check out that section of Saber D films if you're interested in that. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if of interest as well on that side of things, share those videos or classes as and when you see them with people who obviously may be interested. Appreciate everybody's time today. If there are no other questions, then we'll close out for today's session. Thank you for everybody's time today. Hopefully everything was of interest. So what you've learned today, do your background research or research within our doctrine as well to learn more about the subject, so it sticks a bit more and get some understanding, hopefully into an overstanding for you on what we did here with Wu-Sabat and saying your story. So everybody take care, stay safe, whatever you're doing, and we will catch you in a few weeks' time on the 17th of September. Take care all, see you soon.